The metallic clink of boots echoed through the narrow corridors of the derelict alien vessel as Private Marcus Hale navigated its labyrinthine passages. The air was thick with an otherworldly humidity that clung to his uniform, making every step feel heavier than the last. His helmet's HUD displayed fluctuating readings, radiation levels spiking unpredictably, atmospheric composition shifting between breathable and toxic within seconds. Yet, despite the danger signals flashing before his eyes, something about this place called to him, a pull stronger than any military directive. The mission had been straightforward enough: investigate the mysterious distress signal emanating from the uncharted sector of space. What they found defied all expectations: a massive spacecraft, ancient yet somehow pulsing with life, its surface shimmering like liquid mercury under their ship's searchlights. The structure seemed alive, organic in nature, with tendrils of unknown material curling around the hull like roots seeking soil. As the away team breached the entrance, the airlock dissolved into a curtain of iridescent mist, swallowing them whole. Marcus's fingers tightened around his plasma rifle as he moved deeper into the vessel, his training battling against the growing sense of unease. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and changed, almost like they were watching him. Strange symbols flowed across the surfaces in waves of light, too complex for human comprehension but somehow familiar, like half-remembered dreams. He couldn't shake the feeling that these markings held meaning beyond mere decoration, that they were trying to communicate something profound. His communication link crackled intermittently, voices of his teammates distorted by static and what sounded like distant whispers. Lieutenant Commander Torres had ordered them to split up, each taking a different section of the ship to cover more ground. It made tactical sense, but now Marcus wondered if it had been a mistake. The further he ventured, the more isolated he felt, until even the sound of his own breathing seemed foreign in this alien environment. Then he saw her chamber. It wasn't just a room, it was a cathedral of living architecture, vaulted ceilings stretching impossibly high above him, supported by crystalline columns that refracted light into rainbows that danced across the floor. At the center stood a dais, and upon it, she waited. Her presence commanded attention without movement or sound. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water, shifting colors with each breath. Her features were both alien and achingly beautiful, high cheekbones accentuated by delicate ridges that ran from temple to jawline, eyes that glowed softly with an inner light, and hair that floated around her head like silken threads caught in zero gravity. When she turned those luminous eyes toward him, Marcus felt something inside him shift. It wasn't fear exactly, nor was it simple attraction. It was recognition, as if some deep part of his consciousness had been waiting for this moment his entire life. Her gaze held him suspended, pinned by an invisible force more powerful than any weapon in his arsenal. Around her neck hung a pendant that pulsed in time with her heartbeat, casting subtle shadows across her perfect features. She extended a hand toward him, palm facing outward, fingers splayed in a gesture that seemed both welcoming and commanding. Without thinking, Marcus mirrored the movement, his own hand rising instinctively to meet hers. As their palms aligned, a surge of energy coursed through him, setting every nerve ending ablaze. The world tilted sideways as visions flooded his mind, images of stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, and himself standing beside her, connected by threads of light that bound them together. The connection snapped shut with a physical jolt that sent him stumbling backward. When his vision cleared, he found her still watching him, her expression unreadable. Something fundamental had changed in that brief moment of contact, though he couldn't yet grasp what it meant. All he knew was that he'd done something irrevocable, something that would alter not just his life, but perhaps the fate of 2 species. In the days that followed, Marcus discovered that the simple act of mirroring the Queen's gesture carried far more weight than he could have imagined. The alien crew, who had initially regarded him with cautious curiosity, now treated him with a mixture of reverence and suspicion. Their interactions became more formal, their body language shifting to accommodate an unspoken protocol he didn't understand. Even the Queen herself maintained a careful distance, though her eyes continued to follow him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Through fragmented communications with his team, when the interference allowed it, he learned that similar gestures held sacred meaning across countless alien cultures. In this particular society, the hand gesture represented tashvra, a concept that transcended mere bonding or marriage. It signified the joining of souls, a commitment so profound that it altered one's very essence. To perform it was to declare oneself ready to share not just a life, but an existence, with another being. The implications weighed heavily on Marcus as he struggled to process what he'd done. Military protocols offered no guidance for this situation. His training in diplomacy proved woefully inadequate when faced with the depth of cultural significance behind the gesture. Every attempt to explain it as an accident met with polite but firm refusals to acknowledge misunderstanding. The Queen's advisors insisted that such gestures couldn't be performed accidentally, that they required conscious intent at some level of the psyche. As days stretched into weeks, Marcus found himself drawn deeper into the alien culture. They taught him their language, which flowed like music rather than words, each syllable carrying layers of meaning that resonated in his chest. Through these lessons, he began to understand the true weight of what he'd initiated. The Tashvra wasn't merely a union between individuals. It represented the merging of two worlds, two ways of being. By accepting his gesture, the Queen had essentially declared an alliance between humanity and her people, an alliance sealed through their personal bond. Yet, acceptance of this new reality came slowly. Nights spent alone in quarters that adapted themselves to his presence brought moments of panic, where he questioned his sanity. Was he truly capable of understanding this alien consciousness? Could he bear the responsibility of representing all humanity in such an intimate exchange? The pressure mounted as preparations for the formal ceremony began, involving rituals that spanned solar cycles and required participation from both species. During rare moments of solitude, Marcus found himself examining the Queen's behavior more closely. She moved through her duties with grace and purpose, yet there was a tension in her bearing that hadn't been present before. Their accidental bond seemed to affect her as profoundly as it did him, though she bore it with stoic dignity. Sometimes, when they passed in the corridors, their eyes would meet, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw uncertainty reflected in her luminescent gaze. The Queen's chambers had transformed since their initial meeting, adapting to accommodate both their presences. Organic walls now pulsed with patterns that seemed to respond to their combined heartbeats, creating a living tapestry of light and shadow. During their increasingly frequent encounters, Marcus noticed how the atmosphere changed when she entered a room. Temperature, lighting, even gravity itself seemed to adjust to her will. Yet despite her obvious power, she approached him with a gentleness that belied her regal bearing. Their conversations began tentatively, mediated through translation devices that struggled to capture the nuances of her musical language. She spoke of her people's history, of cycles of growth and decay that spanned millennia, of how their civilization had evolved to exist in harmony with the universe rather than conquer it. Each story revealed layers of complexity in her character, wisdom tempered by experience, strength balanced by compassion. Marcus found himself hanging onto every word, trying to piece together the puzzle of this extraordinary being who was now inexorably linked to his fate. As they spent more time together, small details emerged that painted a more complete picture of her personality. She had a fascination with Earth's classical music, particularly pieces that incorporated natural sounds. When he played recordings of ocean waves accompanied by piano, her eyes would close in apparent ecstasy, and the lights in the chamber would pulse in rhythm with the melody. She showed him memories of her homeworld through shared mental images, a planet of crystal forests and liquid light, where buildings grew rather than were constructed, and technology merged seamlessly with nature. Their physical proximity increased gradually, as if both were testing the boundaries of their new relationship. Sometimes she would reach out to touch his arm during explanations, her cool fingers leaving trails of warmth that lingered long after contact ended. Other times, she would stand close enough for him to feel the subtle vibrations of her presence, a constant reminder of the connection they shared. Through these moments, Marcus began to understand that her acceptance of their bond wasn't merely duty. It carried genuine curiosity about humanity, about him specifically. Perhaps most surprisingly, she demonstrated a sense of humor that manifested in unexpected ways. When translation errors occurred, she would tilt her head and produce a series of melodic notes that, he eventually realized, were laughter. Her amusement at his attempts to pronounce alien words correctly became a bridge between their cultures, a shared moment of levity in an otherwise overwhelming situation. Yet beneath these developing connections lay a current of tension. The political ramifications of their bond grew more apparent with each passing day. Her council members watched their interactions with increasing scrutiny, their glowing eyes tracking every movement, every exchanged glance. Some openly opposed the union, citing concerns about human aggression and expansionist tendencies. Others argued that embracing humanity might lead to technological advancements beneficial to both species. These debates often spilled into their private moments, forcing them to navigate not just personal feelings but the weight of interstellar diplomacy. During one particularly charged session with the Council, Marcus witnessed the Queen's diplomatic prowess firsthand. When confronted with aggressive questioning about humanity's suitability as allies, she countered with examples of human resilience and innovation, drawing from knowledge she'd gained through their shared experiences. Her defense of his species was passionate yet measured, revealing depths of strategic thinking that impressed even her most vocal opponents. Afterward, when they were alone, she explained that such conflicts were inevitable but necessary for progress, much like storms that clear the air for new growth. The emotional toll of their situation became increasingly evident in subtle ways. Marcus noticed how her normally radiant complexion would dull slightly after particularly stressful encounters with her advisors. Once, he caught her staring at her reflection in a pool of liquid light, her expression unreadable but deeply contemplative. When he asked if she was all right, she responded with a story about how her people viewed change, not as something to be feared, but as a natural evolution, like the shedding of skin or the changing of seasons. Their nights grew longer as they delved deeper into each other's histories and philosophies. She taught him meditation techniques that involved visualizing their connection as threads of light, strengthening their bond through focused intention. In return, he shared stories of Earth's diverse cultures, finding parallels between human traditions and alien customs that helped bridge their differences. Through these exchanges, a fragile understanding began to form, not just between them personally, but between their species. Yet looming over everything was the approaching ceremony, a date set by ancient tradition that neither of them could delay. As preparations intensified, Marcus found himself torn between excitement and terror. The Queen's presence filled his thoughts constantly, her image appearing in his mind's eye even when they were apart. Their bond, accidental though it may have been, had grown into something real and substantial, challenging everything he thought he knew about relationships, duty, and destiny. The morning of the ceremony arrived with a surreal quality, as if reality itself had shifted to accommodate the monumental event. The grand hall, larger than any human cathedral, thrummed with anticipation. Alien dignitaries from dozens of worlds filled the space, their varied forms creating a kaleidoscope of colors and textures. Some floated gracefully above the floor, while others moved with mechanical precision on multiple limbs. The air vibrated with their collective presence, a symphony of subtle movements and barely perceptible sounds that made Marcus's skin tingle. He stood at the edge of the ceremonial platform, dressed in a hybrid garment that combined elements of human military dress uniform with flowing alien fabrics that seemed to breathe with their own life. The material shifted colors in response to his emotions, betraying his nervousness through erratic patterns of blue and silver. Beside him, the Queen appeared resplendent in robes that seemed woven from starlight itself, her natural radiance enhanced by intricate jewelry that pulsed in time with the ceremony's ancient rhythms. As the ritual began, Marcus struggled to comprehend the complex sequence of events unfolding around him. Alien priests chanted in harmonic tones that resonated through his very bones, while holographic projections of cosmic phenomena danced across the chamber's domed ceiling. The ceremony wasn't merely a wedding but a cosmic alignment, with the positions of distant stars and planets influencing each step of the proceedings. He understood, through months of study, that timing was crucial. Each gesture, each vow, each movement needed to occur precisely when certain celestial bodies reached specific coordinates. The Queen guided him through the unfamiliar motions with gentle touches and subtle nods, her presence a calming anchor in the overwhelming sea of alien tradition. They exchanged vows in a language that existed somewhere between speech and telepathy, each word forming a visible thread of light that wove itself into the fabric of their shared existence. With each promise made, Marcus felt their connection deepen, becoming more tangible than any physical bond. Memories began to merge, her recollections of ancient galactic events blending with his childhood memories, creating a tapestry of shared experience that defied linear time. Yet complications arose as the ceremony progressed. A faction of dissenters, led by a particularly influential elder, disrupted the proceedings with accusations about humanity's violent history. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, some supporting the Union while others denounced it as reckless. The Queen handled the situation with remarkable poise, her voice cutting through the chaos like a beam of pure light. She addressed each concern with historical precedent and philosophical reasoning, demonstrating how their union could usher in a new era of understanding between species. Just as order seemed restored, a technical malfunction threatened to derail the ceremony completely. The ancient machinery controlling the celestial alignments began to falter, its components struggling to interface with human technology that had been integrated into the system. Marcus watched in horror as critical components started to fail, threatening to invalidate the entire ritual. Without hesitation, he sprang into action, his military training kicking in as he worked alongside alien engineers to stabilize the equipment. The Queen joined him, her knowledge of the ancient systems combining with his practical expertise in a display of cooperation that silenced even the most vocal opponents. As they worked together, their hands moving in perfect synchronization despite their different anatomies, Marcus felt something profound shift between them. This wasn't just about fulfilling a ceremonial obligation anymore, it had become a genuine partnership, forged in the heat of crisis and strengthened by mutual respect. The assembled dignitaries watched in awed silence as human and alien technology merged under their coordinated efforts, creating something entirely new and unprecedented. When the machinery finally stabilized and the celestial alignment completed successfully, the chamber erupted in a different kind of chaos, one of celebration and approval. The dissenting voices fell silent, replaced by a chorus of approval from beings who understood the significance of what they had witnessed. The Queen took Marcus's hand, her touch sending waves of warmth through his body, and together they faced their audience, not as separate entities, but as a unified pair representing the potential for interspecies harmony. Yet even as the ceremony concluded successfully, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the beginning of something far greater and more complex than either of them had anticipated. The threads of their bond, now visible as shimmering strands of light connecting them, pulsed with possibilities that stretched beyond individual lifetimes, hinting at destinies intertwined on a cosmic scale. The aftermath of the ceremony brought neither resolution nor reprieve. Instead, Marcus found himself caught in a maelstrom of responsibilities that stretched far beyond the confines of the alien vessel. The bond he had forged with the Queen, now solidified through ritual and cosmic alignment, had unleashed ripples across both their societies. News of their union spread like wildfire, carried by subspace transmissions and diplomatic channels to every corner of known space. Humanity's leaders scrambled to respond, torn between awe at the unprecedented alliance and fear of its implications. Meanwhile, factions within the Queen's own people seethed with discontent, viewing the marriage not as a triumph but as a betrayal of tradition. On Earth, debates erupted in global councils and military command centers. Some hailed Marcus as a hero who would secure humanity's place among the stars, while others branded him a reckless soldier whose impulsive actions could destabilize fragile interstellar relations. The media painted him alternately as a romantic figure swept up in destiny or a pawn manipulated by forces beyond his control. His family, too, was thrust into the spotlight, their quiet lives disrupted by reporters and government agents seeking insight into the man who now represented humanity on an intergalactic stage. For Marcus, the weight of these expectations became suffocating. He spent hours locked in meetings with human diplomats, trying to explain nuances of alien culture they couldn't comprehend. Their questions often felt shallow, focused more on strategic advantages than mutual understanding. "What can we gain from this?" they asked repeatedly, as if the bond were nothing more than a transaction. Each time, Marcus struggled to articulate what he himself barely understood, that this wasn't just about treaties or trade routes, it was about something deeper, something transformative. The Queen bore her share of scrutiny as well. Her advisors convened endless sessions, dissecting every aspect of the ceremony and its fallout. Some argued that the union should be annulled, citing ancient laws that prohibited such bonds under duress, or so they claimed. Others saw opportunity, envisioning technological exchanges and cultural enrichment. Through it all, she remained composed, her luminous eyes betraying little emotion. Yet Marcus noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. She seemed wearier, her movements less fluid, her glowing aura dimmed ever so slightly. It pained him to see her burdened this way, knowing he was partly responsible. Their private moments grew fewer, squeezed out by the demands of their new roles. When they did find time together, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken tension. They spoke of logistics, how to integrate human and alien customs, how to navigate the political minefields, but avoided deeper topics. Neither dared address the question looming over them. Was this truly what either of them wanted? Or were they merely prisoners of circumstance, bound by forces larger than themselves? One evening, as they walked through the crystalline gardens aboard her vessel, Marcus finally broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder," he began hesitantly, "if we're making a mistake?" The Queen paused, turning to face him. Her expression was unreadable, though her fingers twitched toward the pendant around her neck, a nervous habit he'd come to recognize. "A mistake implies choice," she said softly, her voice resonating like distant chimes. "But our paths have already intertwined. To unravel them now would cause greater harm than to continue forward." Her words stung, yet they rang true. Marcus knew she was right. Undoing the bond would only deepen divisions between their peoples. Still, doubt gnawed at him. Was this truly unity, or merely coercion masked by ceremony? He glanced at her, searching for answers in her luminous gaze. For all her wisdom and grace, she seemed as uncertain as he was. As days turned into weeks, the strain between them became harder to ignore. The threads of light connecting them, the visible manifestation of their bond, began to flicker erratically, reflecting the turmoil within. Marcus tried to reassure himself that this was natural, that any relationship required adjustment. But deep down, he feared the truth, that their connection, born of accident rather than intention, might never fully stabilize. Complicating matters further was the growing unrest among the Queen's subjects. Dissenters organized protests outside the palace, their chants echoing through the ship's corridors. Some even resorted to sabotage, targeting systems critical to maintaining harmony between the two species. Marcus found himself thrust into the role of protector, working alongside alien security forces to thwart attacks while grappling with guilt over the chaos his presence had sparked. The Queen, too, faced mounting pressure from those who accused her of prioritizing personal feelings over the good of her people. Amidst the turmoil, small acts of kindness offered fleeting solace. A group of young aliens, fascinated by stories of Earth, sought Marcus out to learn more about his world. They marveled at images of oceans and forests, concepts foreign to beings who had evolved in sterile, controlled environments. In turn, Marcus found joy in teaching them simple Earth games, laughter bridging the gap where words failed. These moments reminded him why their union mattered, not because of politics or power, but because of the potential for connection, for growth. Yet even these bright spots couldn't dispel the shadows gathering around them. Rumors reached Marcus of assassination plots targeting both him and the Queen. While her guards dismissed them as baseless threats, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of danger lurking just beyond sight. Sleep eluded him, plagued by dreams of betrayal and loss. He began carrying his plasma rifle everywhere, a habit that drew disapproving looks from the Queen's courtiers. "You are safe here," she assured him one night, her hand resting lightly on his arm. But her tone lacked conviction, and Marcus wondered if she shared his fears. Their attempts to strengthen their bond faltered under the weight of external pressures. Meditation sessions devolved into tense discussions about protocol. Shared meals turned into strategy meetings. The intimacy they had once begun to build felt increasingly distant, replaced by a cold pragmatism neither of them welcomed, but both felt powerless to resist. Marcus longed to reach out, to bridge the growing chasm between them, but every effort seemed to highlight their differences rather than their similarities. Then came the day when everything changed again. A delegation arrived from a neighboring star system, representatives of a species known for their neutrality in galactic affairs. They brought news of a looming crisis, a massive asteroid field, set on a collision course with the Queen's homeworld. Calculations showed impact within months, potentially devastating the fragile ecosystem that sustained her people. Worse still, the trajectory suggested the debris would scatter across nearby systems, threatening countless other civilizations, including Earth. The revelation threw both Marcus and the Queen into a frenzy of activity. Emergency councils convened, combining human ingenuity with alien technology in a desperate bid to devise a solution. For the first time since their union, they found themselves working side by side without hesitation or second-guessing. The urgency of the situation stripped away pretense, leaving only raw determination. Together, they pored over data, consulted experts, and explored radical ideas that blurred the line between science and magic. It was during one of these late-night brainstorming sessions that Marcus experienced a moment of clarity. As he and the Queen leaned over a holographic projection of the asteroid field, their hands accidentally brushed. The contact sent a jolt through him, not of electricity, but of recognition. In that instant, he realized something profound. Whatever doubts lingered about their bond, whatever challenges lay ahead, they were stronger together than apart. The thought filled him with resolve, banishing the uncertainty that had haunted him for so long. The Queen must have sensed the shift in him, for she straightened and met his gaze. There was no need for words. The understanding passed between them like a spark igniting dry tinder. Whatever happened next, the asteroid crisis, the political machinations, the judgments of their respective peoples, they would face it as one. Not because fate demanded it, but because they chose to. And so, as dawn broke over the alien vessel, casting shimmering light across its organic walls, Marcus and the Queen stood shoulder to shoulder, ready to confront the unknown. The threads of their bond glowed brighter than ever, pulsing with renewed strength. Ahead of them stretched a path fraught with peril and promise, a journey that would test the limits of their courage, their love, and their belief in the possibility of unity across worlds. As Marcus and the Queen turned their focus to the asteroid crisis, a plan emerged, one that required both human ingenuity and alien energy manipulation. They would construct a massive gravitational lens, powered by her people's crystalline technology and humanity's engineering precision. It was risky, untested, but it offered hope. The effort brought their species closer than ever before. Humans and aliens worked side by side, sharing knowledge, laughter, and even grief when setbacks occurred. Through this shared struggle, Marcus saw glimpses of what true unity could look like, not forced, but forged in adversity. One evening, as they stood together overseeing the final preparations, the Queen took his hand. "We may have begun this bond accidentally," she said softly, "but I choose you now, not as a symbol, but as my partner." Her words resonated deeply within him. When the device activated, channeling energy across light years, the asteroid field shattered into harmless dust. Cheers erupted from both sides, a symphony of voices celebrating survival, and something more profound, connection. In the aftermath, dissent among her people quieted. The success had silenced critics, proving that collaboration could achieve miracles. Marcus realized then that their bond wasn't just about two individuals. It represented a bridge between worlds. He thought of Earth, its oceans and forests, and how much he missed it. Yet here he stood, rooted in a new reality, committed to building something greater. The Queen watched him, her glowing eyes reflecting understanding. "You'll always belong to both places now," she whispered, reading his thoughts. He nodded, accepting this truth without fear for the first time. Their hands remained clasped as the ship set course for her homeworld, where rebuilding efforts awaited. Together, they faced forward, ready to nurture the fragile alliance they'd sparked. Though challenges loomed ahead, political tensions, cultural clashes, they no longer felt insurmountable. With each step, their bond grew stronger, transcending accident or obligation. And so, under starlit skies filled with infinite possibility, Marcus embraced his dual identity: soldier and diplomat, human and husband. Their journey was far from over, but at last, he understood his place in it. As their vessel sailed through the cosmos, the threads of light binding them pulsed steadily, a testament to choices made and battles fought. Whatever came next, they would face it together. For in choosing each other, not out of duty, but love, they had chosen hope itself. And that, above all else, would guide them home.